It's common knowledge that the focus of the nation, and that of other nations as well, not just the Armenians, is very drawn to the situation that emerged after the 44-day war. This is natural, and I've also been following this. Everyone's trying to understand what this means, what to do, and what sort of a situation this is. This is very natural, and I believe it would be good to dwell on this for some time. Every opinion matters, because there's this overall impression that the way we perceived the reality was probably too far from the truth, and it did not allow us to orient in this situation. Surely, a lot was spoken about the dangerousness of the situation. All the responsible bodies, as well as other political and public figures, were involved. But we need to try to understand, in the end, what this means, where this goes to, and as it would be hard to say, that what happened to us was a certain cruel act, and I don't know what will happen next, how it will go. There's an impression that a certain process has begun, and there's a definite need to understand the meaning of that process. There are rather interesting approaches by the participants, responsible figures, but yet again, unfortunately, per usual, some sort of, what should I call it, a fix or a dilemma that has periodically existed within the discussions on Armenia is beginning to dominate. That is, capitulators, adventurers, realists, romanticists. There are constant attempts to find explanations in this, and in the end, this leads to some accusatory conclusions. I think starting our conversation, we should first of all try to get out of that dilemma. This is very essential. Afterward, we will try to understand that we should look at all this from a little bit of a different angle in order to be able to really get some rational appraisals. Apart from that, we will also speak about, and I think maybe there should be a series of lectures, so that we could understand the meaning of that dilemma itself, to see why it is so. When looking at the history and the literature, you see, for some reason, for at least 100 years, in this or that situation, both in cases of success and failure, we end up in this dilemma, and we will try to evaluate everything as far as this is concerned. We could start from the way the instances involved in this war behaved. This is also very interesting. Everyone was talking about rights. All the time, at every turn, Azerbaijan was saying that it is exercising its violated rights. The war is on its territory, and in accordance with the 51st Charter of the UN, it has that right to fight there, that Armenia hasn't recognized Karabakh, that it's their territory, and so on and so forth. Our position is based on the norms and principles of the international law, on historical justice, while the position of the Armenians is based on historical lies and the violation of the norms and principles of international law. But what's interesting is that Russian politicians and the president of Russia himself were rather active in those evaluations, that all this war, the end of the war, the signed document, the announcements, they were trying to justify all this by saying, you know, it's the territory of Azerbaijan. Armenia didn't recognize it, so the former Nagorno-Karabakh Republic is also Azerbaijani territory, and we don't have the right to intervene. Nobody recognized the status of Karabakh then. Well, it's true. Neither then nor later, no one recognized it. By the way, Armenia itself did not recognize it. The fact that non-recognition of Karabakh, including on the part of Armenia, left a significant imprint on the course of events and on its perception. Let me remind you that Armenia did not recognize the independence of Karabakh. And for some reason, people somehow forget about it. But in fact, it is so. So it turns out that everybody tried to tell the Armenian side that failed the war, that it was the one to blame. It should have recognized. I don't know how serious our society takes this, but always, throughout the years, I could see that whenever recognition as a factor was the question, people would not take it very seriously. What does recognition have to do with this? Or who needs recognition anyway? You see, then came the pest, and all the sides started to justify it with that. Now we need to try to understand that as well. In the end, what did this war unveil? The first thing that is certain is that the first war led to degradation of political class and the significant part of the society. This is very important for understanding what victories and defeats can bring. A lot of people say that often things happen just the way they do. And especially, a lot of people speak of whether defeat can bring to the opposite, sober up the society, and lead to rise. The examples of this are a lot in the world. We will talk about this as well. Today, we can at least claim that we are permanently behind the requirements brought by the modern times. I don't know, for at least 100 years, we're in the same place. We can say that the First War of Karabakh was an exception. But still, if the result was degradation, that was not a success at all. This means that we have never had the potential that would allow us to return that victory into a path to upsurge. For this reason, we need to reevaluate and understand everything over and over again. As I spoke of rights, it is important to highlight a substantial factor, which, as it seems, has had a significant role in today's failures of ours. What is that? That is the legal mess which we have created throughout 30 years. Even starting from 1989, decisions were made where we can say that the right as a factor was ignored. It was turned into something parenthetic. We'll do things the way we need them done. What does it matter? In our understanding, our well-known power generates rights. That is to say, the world is power, and that's what it is. What are rights? What is law, anyway? I have said multiple times that such approaches are very common. Let's see what happened. It so happened that when everyone was talking about their rights, we didn't know what to talk about. Every figure was speaking the way they perceived things. It seems like we don't have the legal arsenal. Or even if we do, we don't take it seriously. We mock it. Even the issue of Artsak's international recognition. We will talk about this on a different occasion, because it's very important for our society to finally realize that rights is what this world is based on. If you want to succeed in something, you have to manage to get those rights, and you need to respect those rights. If you don't take it seriously, no one else will. But they take their own rights very seriously. And today, we can just come to a small conclusion that this approach towards the right has brought us to a point where the policy of waiving rights was considered a safety. How did this idea come into this nation, especially the political class? Keep silent, refuse, and you'll be safe. No need to propose unnecessary things or to speak. We will talk about this too. We should have a series of lectures with different intertwined topics so that we could reveal that the mindset, the worldview that I try to briefly describe is possibly exactly where the most essential part of our failures is. We talk about Russia a lot. And the problem is not that Russia has brought up the justification of us not having recognized Artsakh. The problem is that Russia had a trump card to carry out this policy. And not just Russia. The way I see it, all that happened is still something that has been a coordinated international operation meant to eliminate the Artsakh Defense Army, invade and occupy the territory, and to divide it, as it seems, between three parts: Russia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. It was important for me to hear one of these speeches of Vladimir Putin that he gave at the Davos International Economic Forum, saying that they have managed to stop the war. All of this, they have sought to follow the agreements reached in the Minsk group, especially with its co-chairs. See what he says? Russia has, for example, undertaken active mediation efforts to stop armed conflicts in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, in which the peoples and states close to us, Azerbaijan and Armenia, were involved. At the same time, we tried to follow the key arguments reached in the OSCE Minsk group, in particular between its co-chairs, Russia and the United States and France. This is also a very good example of this cooperation. He revealed that everything was coordinated. The existing status quo that has been spoken about a lot and has been given serious characteristics, starting from 1991 and up to 2018, can be described as a gunpowder barrel, which surely would explode sometime anyway. They could blow it up altogether. Everyone, every single person could see how the United States or Turkey or Iran were looking at the issue. Were there no coordinated approach? It would be very difficult to just sit idly by for 44 days and watch how an army is being obliterated, destroyed. 44 days in the 21st century. We will definitely speak about this later. The reason why that status quo was a gunpowder barrel was that all the rights on the territory, from Armenia to the others, had been given to Azerbaijan throughout decades, while the territory still remained with us. Do you understand what this is? Imagine you're on a territory for decades. You have it at your disposal, but all the rights were given to somebody else, who would then trumpet it for 30 years, that it's their territory and they're going to take it. This situation shouldn't be left aside. There were suggestions, but those suggestions were very narrow. It seemed to people that things could be changed by just ceding certain territories. Now we speak a lot, right? Now that we have already lost the territories, everyone tries to say that they would return them on much better terms. The reality was completely different. No one has ever realized that was just one of the many components. If you want to change the situation, you have to see what you're doing with the rights that you so generously presented to Azerbaijan. We will speak about this on a different occasion, but there's one thing that's very essential, as a lot of people say that Russia has betrayed us. It's the word betrayal. You know what? There's no betrayal. Russia, alongside with the others, achieved its national objectives. It did it periodically and in many different ways. It did the same in the 90s, and it did the same this time with Turkey, with the United States, and will do the same tomorrow. Turkey was also pursuing its national interests. Each and every one of them was doing that. This has nothing to do with the betrayal or anything of the kind. The thing here is that there's a certain logic in the relations between these states, which find their reflections in our region and are relevant to us as well. It's this logic, the existence of which a lot of people fail to understand properly. Everyone says, oh, how great, Russian people are here. Now it will be calmer, we will do this, we will do that. There have been such times before already. They have been here in Artsakh in the 90s as well. We saw what they did to Artsakh in 91. Then they left. Then the new situation emerged. Then they tried to come again in the 94, after the war. But they didn't manage to do anything. Another situation, a more beneficial one, arose for us. Now they have come back. And what we can see is that the logic of the policy of Russia has changed a little bit, let alone Turkey and the others. We will try to speak over that as a separate topic, but a very important topic as well, for it is probably the most important thing. And altogether, this series of lectures can be given a name within that triangle, or maybe a cell. It should be called in the Russian-Armenian-Turkish cell of reviewing logics, reinterpreting understanding, that maybe the way that we understood things was what led us to this dead end. It is generally of great significance, as we really love talking about the Armenian-Turkish relations for 100 years. But there have been attempts at creating certain relationships at various times. I don't know, it's important to speak about this. What is the essence of these relations? It seems like everything is as clear as day, and different approaches were suggested. Some people call them romantic, others refer to them as pragmatic. This one's pragmatic, this one's romantic. But the opposite side could easily say that altogether, regulating these relations is the biggest romanticism ever. There's no such thing, and as there's no precedent. It should be at least concrete, so that it could be labeled, for example, as pragmatism. It ended very badly all the time. This is also a separate topic, so we need to understand the worldview of Turks as well, their history, where it all comes from, briefly, of course. We don't dive too deep into the history, but we will try to get a better understanding of people we have problems with. And also, first of all, about the reason why we look at the problems this or the other way. Where does it come from? Why do we always try to say we don't have support from the world, we don't have a backer, we even say we don't have an ally? There's not a single proper ally that we have. That's why we will give several lectures. And I think a lot of these things will become clear. We will even speak about why the Armenian nation is so conflicting, where this conflict comes from, why does the dilemma I mentioned earlier exist throughout centuries? Why do they represent each other in an accusatory way? Accusations only like defeatist, no-inch offlander, betrayer, etc. This is an important thing to understand. We need to speak about the other feature that our historians and writers have written about many times, and is still common and very definite. Where does that constant search of a backer come from? This is a crucial fact. And why do we have so much trouble creating political forces? Why are we authoritarian? Why do the words of one person matter so much for us? And it's very hard for us to take collective decisions. This is one of our biggest misfortunes. It's way too hard. Where does such a worldview appear from? Why is there such a situation where these problems continue all the time, throughout decades and centuries, and hinder the creation of a simple political way of thinking? Why is it so hard for us to understand such a simple thing, which in lots of places isn't even taught, as it is rooted in the consciousness of all the people? The point I'm trying to make is that, speaking of international relations, any enlightened person in the world knows that they're based on balance of powers and have the national interests in their roots. It's really that straightforward. And no matter what we want to do in this life, and we should have done something already, we should have understood that there are these three resources and these three phenomena that are essential. There's nothing beyond this. But how to understand that? We need to come back to this over and over again. I will try to come back to these issues in different lights during different lectures. For our goal is to try to discover the formula for success for us. Can we understand this or not? They talk, right? They say, why did we win the other war and lost this one? And there are different views, you know? There's already a demand for the formula for success. We'll talk about this later.